Hello, students, and welcome to AP Mob Psycho Bio 100. I am Luke, he, they, and I am joined on this brand new podcast by my excellent co host, Janine, who you might recognize from some other projects that I have done in the past.
Hello. My name's Janine Joliet. My pronouns are she, they, and I have way too much to say about what we've just watched today. But you may remember me from such podcasts as Wheezing Together as One, the Weezer podcast.
The
And
rival Weezer podcast.
that's true.
Sorry, I know that some of you may be confused why I would have Janine on the show, because we did have these rival Weezer podcasts, and well, I ultimately agreed with Janine on some of her views more than my old co-host Devin's views. We both kind of decided to do something new after what happened with Weezer.
We both appreciate that we're both passionate about Weezer, but we thought that a nice common middle ground was going to be just the general vibes. And I really do like that we have this pairing just based on vibes, because I can't think of any other metric you would want to do this kind of show on.
Yes, and because I am constantly the first chair on anything that I do, I presented this idea to Janine. And so if you haven't figured out what we are doing a podcast on, we are doing a podcast on the NBC and Peacock show AP Bio, as well as the anime series Mob Psycho 100, which was an adaptation of the web manga series by One. And they ultimately, if you count some of the specials as 2 episodes, have the same number of episodes. And I feel like there are a lot of people who would enjoy both of these shows, both of which deal with slightly scummy adults being mentor figures for kids in ways that maybe they should not, as well as examining adolescence and what that means. As I had mentioned, Mob Psycho 100 was based on the web manga series by One, who also created One Punch Man, and it started as an anime in 2016, though the last season came out in 2022, so there was a bit of a slowdown there, but I think it was worth it in the end. And it is also something where, from the title alone, we get a lot of Japanese specific terms. And so, while it sounds like it might be about someone who's in a mafia, a more literally translated title would be something like Fully Charged Psychic Nobody, as opposed to being a psychic mafia of 100 people. AP Bio was an original series created by Mike O'Brien that started in 2018 and ended in 2021 as a Peacock exclusive. And so, what we're going to be doing is a recap of each of these shows, doing a handful of episodes from each at the same time. And then we are going to pick AP Bio characters to cast as these Mob Psycho 100 characters. Ultimately, the goal isn't necessarily to pitch, but Manny, if you are listening to this, I know you are, dude. We need to get people on because I think there's a good opportunity here for an English live action adaptation, because there was the Netflix one, but it didn't go anywhere. And we are in an age where people are starting to figure out what they need to do, and I think there is a lot of potential here. So, we are going to be covering the first 2 episodes of Mob Psycho 100, as well as the first 2 episodes of AP Bio. Starting off with Mob Psycho 100, these episodes ran from July 12th through the 19th of the year 2016, and they released in the US October 27th through November 3rd of the year 2018. The first title, episode 1, is Self-Proclaimed Psychic, Arataka Reigen, and Mob. And Reigen Arataka, I'm going to use some of the English ordered versions of names. is a psychic con man who, when he needs help, calls for Mob, that is his nickname, a high schooler with amazing psychic powers and issues sticking up for himself. In this first episode, we're also introduced to Ritsu, his younger brother, who's sort of the golden child. And Mob, despite his powers, is unathletic and bad at school. Reigen and Mob go to look at a haunted tunnel where Mob senses a very powerful spirit. Reigen lets Mob fight the majority of the ghosts, but then bumps into the boss of the Death Spectres, a dead, ghostly motorcycle gang. But Mob protects Reigen, and then Mob attacks the boss of the spirits and finds out that they've been forced to work for the evil spirit in the tunnel. Mob destroys that evil spirit, and the ghost bikers get to leave. And we get a lot of things in this first episode. What thoughts did you have on this one, Janine?
Well, Reagan was voted number one in Tumblr's first Tumblr Sexy Man competition when the website first got polls.
Mm-hmm.
So it really means a lot to kind of like see exactly what the appeal was and what made this weird trash person beat out Sans Undertale, you know?
Mm-hmm. Reagan also won one or two top princess polls, if I'm remembering correctly.
I
Because
think one of them was like Funimation, but then like they were, bought out by Disney when Disney decided to try to buy anime entirely.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been interesting watching the sort of congealing of networks. Warner Brothers now being a fully owned Sony subsidiary is fascinating, but I digress. You were talking about your introduction to Reagan.
Yes. So I think that there was definitely, I don't know. I feel like a lot of these Tumblr sexy men are just like guys in suits. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I guess I can see the appeal.
Yeah.
I don't know. But personality is pretty shitty in a way
Mm-hmm.
that is like not as offensive to me. I don't know. Like, he doesn't seem to be like, well, sure, he is punching down a lot all the
Mm-hmm.
time, actually. But I don't know. Like, you see a little bit of like how he cares. Like, there's something about that silent guy thing of like just knowing that you're going to be like going out and eating food like that. Spoiler for the end of the episode.
I think he strikes a good balance on. He is very aware of the balancing situation that he is in, because it's also not something where he is being exploitative and making lots of money. And ultimately, his goal is to help people. Like, we see a bit more of this in the second episode, Doubts About Youth, the Telepathy Club appears, where Reagan generally treats curses and psychic problems with physical solutions. And it's a good recurring bit, and it's a good stand for a con man who has no psychic abilities of his own. Because ultimately, we do attribute much of our moral issues to things that are outside of our own, when maybe we do just need a massage or to drink water or even to get our concerns off of our chest. These sorts of mental stresses can cause, ironically, psychic damage.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm. And so Mob, meanwhile, wonders if he should do things besides his job as a teen. At the Salt Middle School, the fifth member of the Telepathy Club quits, and so Tokugawa, who's the vice president of the student council, moves to shut the club down unless they can get a new member within 2 days. Tomei, the president of the Telepathy Club, leads the other members to try and recruit someone, but they are unable to find anyone, so they reach out to Mob, and they also then remember that he's an actual psychic. Mob asks Reigen what he should do because he doesn't actually want to join. And Reigen ends up pushing Tomei to fake tears. The other members of the group try to convince him so they can just continue to hang out, and Mob asks to think about it. And now, an interesting thing is that we then get into sort of the back end of this plot, which initially is set after the end of the first quote unquote season that is covered in the show, but they moved it up here because I think that it does a good job of highlighting some of Mob's insecurities in a way that I don't think would make as much sense where it falls within the web manga. So Reigen and Mob head to an all-girls high school. They dress up as girls, which is not great. But Mob is...
I will say this.
Mhm.
Reigen is serving so much cunt.
Yes. And Mob is ultimately not discomforted when he is accepted through, which I think says something about gender that perhaps he's not, or that one is not interested in looking at. So Mob goes in to meet with the clients. Their high school is haunted, and they had to call the cheapest exorcist that they could find. So Mob traps the spirit in the gym and reveals it as the Scent Ghoul. Mob is much stronger, protects the students, and dispels the Scent Ghoul, who reveals that he was a loser when he was alive, much like Mob, and asks him if he is living every day at the fullest. So back at school, the Body Improvement Club plans to take over the Telepathy Club's space. Mob is questioned about what he wants to do, and he realizes that he really wants to ask out Sabomi, who is more interested in guys who are good at sports, and so he joins the Body Improvement Club instead as a twist ending. And we're going to be seeing more of all of these groups, but I think it does a good job of subverting and establishing a lot of the themes ultimately that Bob has these psychic abilities, but they don't bring him happiness. Thoughts on that second episode?
I think that there's a lot in here. Like, I don't think I would recommend anybody just watching just the first episode. You got to go with the first two because, as much as the first episode sets up the premise, the second episode really sets up the tone, and like it literally does set up expectations so you could be able to knock them away. And once you be able to see that result, you feel like this is the level of twists and turns I could be able to expect that will lead me up in situations that are hilarious. And honestly, I feel like it's an understanding of comedy that like I have not really seen in anything that wasn't like um a sitcom from like fucking like I want to say late 70s early 80s era.
Mm-hmm. I think ultimately the fact that it has a very clear guiding philosophy and principle, and it is based on the writing of one person, makes it as effective as it is. It's also, I think, very interesting if you were to look at the initial web manga. Uh, the studio does a good job of beefing up without overdoing the art. Like, a lot of the manga art is very juvenile and unpolished in a way, and this brings the that art into a way where I think it's a bit more palatable to people who have reasonably higher standards for a quality anime, while finding a good way to keep a lot of the humor, if not to enhance it. So we are going to be looking at characters to match. I don't think we need to match all of these because one of these situations that we're going to have is Mob Psycho 100 is a anime series that is not necessarily self-contained, but it is a much different type of show in terms of how it's going to introduce characters into the larger scale of things. So while there's going to be some minor characters, there's some that we haven't seen fully defined, and I think we may end up with fewer characters overall than we would have in our other show. Characters who we are going to be matching at some point from these episodes include Reigen, Hanako, and Taro. We didn't get to them in that much, but they are a couple who are troubled by Ceiling Crasher, who is a ghost. There's also Mob, aka I was going to say Mob, aka Shigeo, but it's Shigeo Kageyama, aka Mob. That's a bit of a is Superman Clark Kent or is Clark Kent Superman? Along with Mr. and Mrs. Kageyama, Sabomi, the Boss Ghost, Haruto Kajibayashi, Hikaru Tokugawa, the Scent Ghoul, Shirohiko Saruta, Tome Karata, Chihiro, and Mari, and we'll get into some of those later on. But first we have an ad break, so I've got to do this read, but if you would like to support the show, make sure to subscribe to the Ghost account for this podcast. That is the best way to get early episodes of this. Krantz Muffins. When you need a snack or breakfast treat, Krantz Muffins can't be beat. Since 1962, the Krantz family have been making muffins outside of Little Rock, Arkansas, and the only thing that has changed in the recipes has been a regular update removing chemicals that have been found to be dangerous. Krantz has a variety of muffin flavors including blueberry, lemon poppy seed, chocolate chip, tobacco, dream pie, molasses, carrot cake, and over 30 more. And, thanks to the magic of e-commerce, you can now get fresh baked deliveries within 48 hours across the contiguous United States, and within a week globally. And if you use the code APMOB, that's APMOB at checkout, you'll get 15% off of your first order. Go to krantzmuffins.com and use the code APMOB for 15% off of your first purchase.
I can't stop eating the tobacco muffins. It's so fucking addicting.
Yeah, but they aren't bad for you.
Yeah, no, it's organic.
Mm-hmm. It's the smoking the muffins, and they say on the packaging, "Do not smoke the tobacco muffins." The other show we are covering is AP Bio. These episodes initially premiered online February 1st and 2nd back in 2018. Episode 1 is Catfish. Jack Griffin is the new AP Bio teacher at Whitlock High School, a former Harvard professor who has moved back to Toledo after losing tenure in a fight and is spending a year living in his dead mom's house, and he is not actually going to teach biology at the school. He instead plans to break his nemesis, Miles Warren, the head of Stanford Philosophy and a best-selling author. If any of his students will reveal the truth, they are going to be failed, and if they are quiet, they will all pass. The principal of the school, Ralph Durbin, tries to confront Jack about destroying the sign for the school, but gets distracted, and Jack introduces himself to some of the other members, including Steph, Mary, and Michelle, the other teachers at the school, who tell him that he can make the kids do anything he wants. Jack breaks up a plan to convince him how he should teach the kids and decides to get the kids to catfish Miles instead. That's when Jack has a plan to hook up with his ex, which fails, and he gets very drunk as a result. When he doesn't show up at school the next morning, Coach Novak shows up, but that is when an injured Jack returns, explaining what happened when he tried to urinate on the hospital where his ex works. Devin, one of his students, got arrested later for urinating on his bully's house, and Ralph brings Devin by Jack to talk to him. Jack tells Devin to run any future crazy ideas by him, and then Jack asks for advice from the teachers, who suggest forcing Devin and his bully to spend a lot of time together, so he pulls Dan Decker, Devin's bully, into his class, and Miles receives his first catfish message. What did you think about this as an introductory episode?
I feel like it definitely feels like I had a knee jerk reaction that I felt like this guy definitely was taking like this. I don't know. I don't know. It felt like it was a photocopy of Jeff Winger that they drew devil horns on in order to try to make him even more evil. And it really took me a while to warm up to this guy. But
Uh,
you know,
Jack,
yeah, Jack.
mhm, played by
Because
Glenn Howerton.
right. Was I supposed to know that? I did not do my homework.
That's why I'm here as the first chair.
You're funny. So, there's a certain charisma that like you don't want to like lose, from
Hmm.
everything bad that he's doing, but with just the most um unashamed line delivery of some heinous shit, like you kind of got to give it to him.
I think that he has been well timed and well trained from his time on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Jack Griffin would make a really good drag queen.
Interesting. Would you elucidate on that?
No,
Would you expound on that?
maybe later.
Fair enough. Yes. So we get the premise. We also get the rejection of the idea that Jack is going to grow and change from teaching the kids as an explicitly called out idea. And I appreciate that subversion in a show where these kids are attempting to learn how life works, and part of AP Bio is learning about different relationships, learning about how different things can affect each other. Because while I think that this is not necessarily a parasitic relationship and it is not a competitive relationship, I think maybe at this point it seems like an amenalist relationship.
It does kind of throw things in the air though, because you're wondering then, okay, if bringing together the students and their teacher into like a bigger relationship is not the goal, and if like is the goal really just taking down this man that he hates? Is that like, I don't know, like you want it to follow what other shows have done before.
Mhm.
And it spends the entire episode just hammering the fact down that no, this is not going to be like that.
Yes, it is not a show where he is going to learn to be a better person and look for redemption. The second episode is Teacher Jail. Jack is in trouble for leaving his students unattended, and he gets the idea to start writing a book and leaves the class unattended alone. Victor, one of the students, gets in trouble while he's out of the room, so Durbin brings Jack in to punish him. Helen, the school secretary, takes over for the class in the meanwhile, and the teachers' union rep comes in to assist Jack. She gives Jack the option for a 1 week unpaid suspension or to go to teacher's jail for months and get paid, which he accepts. And it turns out that Kim and Ralph have a long going rivalry. In teacher jail, Jack makes friends with Philip when he starts working on his book. Helen's class, meanwhile, is very graphic about the female body, and so the class decides to try and replace her. Ralph tries to get Jack to return to class by offering him a less harsh punishment. And Sarika, one of these students, leads the other kids to try and find a new substitute when they get caught by Helen, who they convince to go to Ralph because the rest of the school is falling apart without her. In front of the board, Kim attacks Ralph, blaming him for the problems in the school, reasonable and otherwise, and pushes for him to be fired. And Jack feels guilty and tries to get her to calm down, and when she refuses her, And when she refuses his request, he accuses her of tickling, the same reason that Philip claimed to be in teacher jail. And it turns out that Philip may have. It's not fully clarified, but it sounds like he had sex with the CPR dummy. So Jack admits to fault, is docked 3 days' pay, and returns to the class in time to knock out the dream substitute that the class had worked with Helen to find. Jack then reveals that he knows the initial accident was staged by the class and says his goodbye to Philip. I appreciate that they move quickly into this is sort of how the relationship is going to be. And Paula Pell as Helen DeMarcus is a breakout character. Are you familiar with Paula Pell, Janine?
I don't know if I know.
She had been a writer for years on Saturday Night Live, as well as other shows. More recently, she has done voice acting work on a lot of things and made more appearances. She was in the show Girls Five Eva. She is also a very open lesbian and has been in a relationship with her now wife for long enough that she has publicly made it a rule that she will not kiss anyone else besides her wife, and so her wife eventually appears in most shows that she has worked on.
Aw, that's sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Helen is going to be a character we start to get more of as the show realizes what an asset that they have. The makeup of the show is also interesting because it is going to change, and we'll get into that when we naturally talk about it. Any other comments on episode 2?
I feel like Philip's deal was probably a lot worse, and the writers maybe had to tone it down. Because I feel like that there are definitely worse things that you could be able to say than, fucking a CPR dummy, so to
Mm-hmm.
say. But, I also don't know, like, if this character is a reoccurring character, or if they really wanted to, like, test how bad of a person that our bad lead can be able to make friends with. Like, I don't know. It
I
doesn't it is a subversion of anything at all that I would be expecting, but it's kind of a letdown that it's not worse.
I think part of it is, and we do not see Mark Proch return to this rule uh, in the future. Uh, we do get a brief moment of Coach walking by and uh, Philip just grabs for him, and Coach actively like reels back. It's this quick moment because he's not talking and he's not the focus, but it's one of those things where it's like maybe he did do more. And I think there is a level where if we do not know something about another person, they can hide these dark halves from us. And how we determine is that actively bad, how much of a deal breaker that is, these are important things. I'd also like to give a shout out to Niecy Nash, who did a great job as Kim in this episode. We get a great dynamic between her and Patton Oswalt as Principal Ralph Durbin.
I think that there is there's really something about it, like when you could be able to subvert how we think that a character would react. But
Mhm.
I was a little bit on Kim's side after a while. Like, hell yeah, take down that little worm.
Interesting. I think that Ralph Durbin falls in the category of inept, but his heart is in a good place. And he's not always the most inept person, but he falls into the sort of fun boss who needs to be willing to let things exist outside of his grasp for comedy to happen. And we do see him attempting to reel Jack in. He's just not very good at it because Jack is a very charismatic figure. Also, I didn't bring this up earlier. Do you know what famous literary character is also named Jack Griffin?
Is it Jack Griffin?
Uh, I mean, technically, the Invisible Man in the classic Universal film is also Jack Griffin.
Oh,
Hmm.
interesting.
Yes.
So do you think that this could maybe be a part of the Dark Universe?
I mean, they've seemed to have gone in a different direction, but
Are you talking about Rat Hands?
I don't like Rat Hands. I feel like it's
It's
been
my
minionized.
favorite. It's my favorite.
I know. I got you the Rat Hands print shirt, and yeah. Anything else to say about this one?
I think that I love that the students have so much agency that it does not seem like. I mean, yes, there obviously is going to be a power imbalance. One person is an adult and a teenager, the others are minors and students. So, like,
Mhm.
there's levels of like things that they can and can't do. But they also have options. They can't not do nothing, you
Mhm.
know?
These are students who we're going to get a lot more one-on-one on the relationship with Jack and the students in coming weeks, where they're going to be more defined. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how you feel about some of these, especially with the knowledge that two of the current students are going to leave after season one, and one of them will be fully retconned away in a way that makes no sense.
Huh.
But it also doesn't cause issues, even when it is directly flashbacked.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait for
Uh,
that.
yeah, that is one of the ways that these shows are sort of different in that this is a show with actual people. Actors have a harder time needing to be on set reasonably. Shooting seasons are different. They may leave to pursue other opportunities. Characters who I think we've gotten a decent bit of information on include Jack Griffin, Sarika Sarkar, Devon, who was never given a last name, Ralph Durbin, Dan Decker, Steph Duncan, Mary Wagner, Michelle Jones. We're going to be getting more of Steph, Mary, and Michelle in the future. Heather Wilmore, Victor Kozlowski, Coach Novak, Marcus Kasparak, Helen DeMarcus, Kim Burke, Anthony Lewis, Grace, Colin, and then just because we do need some smaller characters to fill things out, we have Zach from the arbitration board and a Mr. Vining who was played by Taron Killam. And so let's get into seeing if we have matches that I think we are going to be able to uh, agree with, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And again, we didn't get a lot of smaller characters this episode, so some of them I think we can hold until we've gotten some more character fodder, is the term that I would use. I feel like inarguably our Reigen Arataka is Jack Griffin.
Yeah, it's gotta be. I mean,
Hmm.
they're the basis of and center of like a lot of everything that's going on. But not only that, but they're where the vibes come from. That it writes itself. If we didn't
Hmm.
do it, I would call us stupid and hate us forever. And we don't
Yes,
want that.
I would agree with that. I think, would we want to put a rule on where if we both don't have a character, we hold that character on for the next episode?
Interesting. Sure. Let's do that.
Okay, because I do not have anyone currently for Hanako, Taro, or the Ceiling Crasher. Because again, most of the characters we've gotten in these episodes have either been very specific roles, and none of them have really fit the idea of a couple or a ghost who gets busted early on.
Sure. Yeah, I can go without them.
All right, I will mark those down as hold. We then have what I think is going to be a good point of debate. I would be interested in your pick for Mob, aka Shigeo Kageyama.
I thought about this really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like 3 nights.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to get any sleep on it at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I feel the best when I say Principal Ralph Durbin.
Interesting. What has inspired the Durban of the situation?
Well, the very Durbin of it is
Mm-hmm.
just that there is a lot that is directed in a particular way, in a particular fashion, at Principal Durbin that I feel that Reigen has the exact same energy, the exact same um, working up somebody enough so that you can be able to get them to think and do what you want.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of level of manipulation, but also in a weird sense, um, it isn't malicious. It's just
Mm-hmm.
trying to get what you want.
Interesting. I had two, and I think we may need some more time to figure out a good mob we can agree on. I had Victor Kozlowski if we wanted to go with a very standard pick, because we don't get a lot of Victor, but he's similarly kind of a nobody, someone who would not really be noticed, who we see parts of him have a lot of potential. The other is if we did want to go for an American adaptation, I think that Heather Wilmore could be a good mob. We haven't seen a lot of uh, her so far, but Allison Snyder, who started off as a YouTuber, is going to become one of the best characters in the show.
I'm going to find it very hard to budge from Ralph Durbin.
Okay, well, we can put this on hold now because our mob pick, I think, is going to be important. And
Okay.
I'm not fully denying Ralph Durbin, but I think we want to make sure that we do this correctly.
I kind of want to hear from our listeners.
Yeah, if you want to go on to Ghost, the AP Mob site, the AP Mob Psycho Bio 100 account, go and let us know who you think we should cast for Mob. We then have Mr. and Mrs. Kageyama from the role as parents who are ultimately kind of powerless and not entirely aware of what is going on. That's where I used Ralph and Helen. I don't think it's a perfect fit for them, but
I
I
don't
think from
either.
a
I mean,
parental
like,
role.
well, they are parents. And I feel like we just basically just got like a couple of lines to generally get a vibe. And I don't know how much of that I could be able to go off of. I kind of want to see what they, if they even do anything more, you know?
Mhm. Which I think is fair. We then had Sabomi Takane, who is the girl who Maud has a crush on. I had Grace in this role. Did you have anyone for Sabomi?
I also had Grace. I'm going to be honest. Like, I felt like that would be the kind of actress I would want to have in this particular role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, let's. We have both agreed there. I think we take that as a sign of kismet. For Boss Ghost, who did you have?
I had Dan Decker.
Interesting. You don't think that Dan Decker is going to be a big character, or
I don't. It's not just that I don't think that Dan Decker is going to be a big character. I don't think Dan Decker is going to be a character I'm going to end up caring for.
I am going to be so excited to watch you eat your words.
I have a very hard time swallowing those.
Hmm. Uh, can I tempt you with my offer of a character who we aren't going to see again, but who I think would be a nice subversion of the idea, which is Kim.
Ooh,
Kim, who is very powerful, seems like she could lead a bunch of ghost bikers, but also understands there are constraints of power and different levels of power.
interesting. Hmm. Yeah, I can see it.
All right. We then have Haruto Kichibayashi. Uh, and Haruto is the student council, or no, Haruto is a member of the club who is very gaunt faced. This is where I had Devin, which is that a surprise?
Not really. I also had Devin. I was doing that mainly based on like just
Face.
appearance. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, as much as Devin is set up to be a character who connects more closely with Jack in season one, he is only in season one of the show.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. It's never addressed, but Dan Decker, meanwhile, is going to stay on the show.
Oh, that is weird.
Mm-hmm. We then have Hikaru Tokugawa, who is the student council representative. I'd gotten them mixed up. Who did you have for Hikaru Tokugawa?
I had Coach Novak mainly for
Mm-hmm.
vibes because, here's a person who's in authority, who's doing their job, but maybe is kind of a dick, but ultimately you have to listen to them because yeah, they're doing their job.
But also, Hikaru is a teen, which I think is an important line of distinction.
Just testing exactly how far we can be able to bend these rules.
Fair. I had Marcus Kasparak as my Hikaru because he is, we're going to see more of it, a rules person. He is organized and part of student council. But we can put Hikaru on hold if you want.
Sure.
All right. We then have the Scent Ghoul. This is where I used Philip.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, definitely.
all right. When we've got it, we've got it. We then have Shirahiko Saruta. who is another member of the Telepathy Club. Who were you feeling for Shirohiko?
I'd put down Victor Kozlowski just based
Mhm.
on
Vibe.
yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't really get a lot of characterization in the anime. In a way where weirdly, Victor is going to get a good deal of characterization in AP Bio. I put down Colin, who we haven't really seen, but he is in a similar boat as Devon, where he's going to have a focal episode in season one, and then he is gone and replaced with a better character in season two onward. So I'm good to put a hold on Shirohiko.
I mean, sure, if you want to put Victor in a pile or something,
Yeah,
since you like him so much.
I think there are good characters that we should hold on to for later. We could call it the
In the
Victor
Victor
pile.
pile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We then have Tomei Karada, aka All the Way Tomei, leader of the Telepathy Club. Who did you have for Tomei?
I had Sarika Sarkar.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Uh, I had Heather in this, but I want to keep Heather away. Sarika does have the right sort of type A energy, I think it's been
Type A
classified.
energy who is wrangled around people that are easily pushed over.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Uh, she is in the club because it would look good on the resume for college. Except that Tomei really wants to be in the club to not have to do anything. Yeah, I think that is a better fit than I had. And then I had nobody for Chihiro or Mari because we haven't really gotten superfluous female student aged characters.
Yeah, the only thing that I had close was Mary and Steph, and I don't want to use Mary and Steph.
No,
We
we
can
should
put
hold
them on
on
the
to
Victor
Mary and stuff.
pile.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, the ones that we have defined are our Reigen Arataka is Jack Griffin, our Sabomi Takane is Grace, our Boss Ghost is Kim, our Haruto Kijibayashi is Devin, our Sint Ghoul is Philip, and our Tomei is Sarika Sarkar. So, our goal is going to be doing about two of these. So, this will be a limited form podcast. Uh, just to put it out there, I think we're going to be able to get about another 20 episodes from this. But you'll be able to see the cover art, and I guess we're going to need to figure out what to do with characters we didn't cast if we wanted to use those for the cover, especially since we have not figured out our mob. But you can go and find the podcast on our Ghost or on our Twitter or on our Meta. If you look up AP Mob Psycho Bio 100, you can find me on most social media platforms as Coltreg, that's Koltreg. Janine, where can you be found on most places?
Most places you could be able to find me under Janine Juliet, or sometimes Janine is Doe.
Wonderful. And
Also Neopets. You could be able to find me on Neopets.
all right, please go and find Janine on Neopets. Our cover art will be by acclaimed uh, animator Mike Patton. So make sure to follow him on all social medias at Patton_pending. That's PATTEN_PENDING. And that is all. Thank you for listening to this first episode. If you have feedback on it, if you'd like to see more of it, we're planning on doing more of it, but your support will make sure that it happens. We look forward to being back in 2 more weeks with the next episode of this show. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful 2 weeks. Keep learning.